Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Deb Roth, for being my guest. I am so excited for this interview. And it's more than an interview. The reason that I'm doing this entire series is that I have the most amazing people inside of my community. Empowering You community was built over 3 years ago, and we have the best superstars, people that are showing up for themselves and for the world. And I thought, I've been wanting to do this for over a year. And in January, I finally said, I'm doing it. No matter what, I'm going to find the time. It is time for the world to know about each and every one of them and how they show up for themselves in their own businesses, but also how they come in and they support inside of the Empowering You community. Deb Roth is someone that I've known for the last couple of years. We were involved in a community together where we're all about wellness and well-being and holistic, that whole body connection. And we've recently, in the last 6 months, joined a community that is all about joy and living joyly ever after. And we've started to have some deeper conversations and connections. And so for that reason, I was like, she needs to be my next guest. So thank you, Deb, for showing up here for us today. I would love to ask you all about all of the titles and the initials behind your name, and it's impressive. I was like, you have been doing this for a long time, but I actually would love people to feel your heart and your soul first. So
I
who
am
is Deb Roth?
I
Who
am
is
so
she?
excited to be here, Debbie, just because the fact that you start with a question like that, ah, delightful. So, my essence, who am I? It's funny, when Debbie and I were talking about this, I was thinking, boy, it really is, it goes back to what my original life purpose statement was when I first started coaching 25 years ago or something, when people were just learning what life and career and business coaching, all that stuff was, which was, I'm a spirited, insightful, compassionate force for change in the world. I create safe and sacred space for people to access joy, and for myself and others to access joy in all areas of our lives. So I know that maybe that sounds a little, I don't know, maybe not from the heart, but I mean, I created that statement, something that I do with my own coaching clients, depending on what we're doing together, a long time ago, and it still resonates with me. It's how I want to show up in the world: spirited, compassionate, insightful. I want to be a change agent, a thought leader. And what I love most to do, and it gets, I think, infused, included, integrated in everything that I do, and I do a lot of different things. It gets incorporated into my life in every way, whether I'm an interfaith minister, so whether I'm leading a meditation or leading one of the hundreds of magical, fun wedding ceremonies that I do, or vow renewals, working on a vow renewal now, or whether I'm just creating virtual sacred space. I do virtual new moon circles every month. I lead a very short, beautiful full moon meditation. Yesterday was the full moon in Scorpio. Did a sweet little 15-minute meditation yesterday. So no matter what I'm doing, I'm creating sacred space. So that's a real cornerstone of all the different branches of my tree.
I love that you talk about it as the branches of your tree, because I believe that all of us that do this type of sacred work understand not only the branches, but the roots. And we can go chills as I said that. So we can go deeper into that a little bit more. Deb, I was busy behind the scenes, so apologize if I didn't hear you say this. But one of the things that I was so impressed when we had our just coffee chat conversation is that you were way ahead of the game. Like, you were an early adapter and somebody that was leading the pack of this holistic well-being. And helping people understand mindset and supportism and feminism and all of those things. Can you help us understand why that all came about? Like, why did you feel so driven to be this leader?
That is such a juicy question, Debbie, because it really taps into what I feel like my growth edge has been this time around in this lifetime. Because I mean, I grew up, I like to say upstate New York, vanilla wasp. And I really, and I know lots of, still do, wonderful upstate vanilla wasp. But when I walked into, there was some point where I felt like there was more to my spirituality than the waspness of it. And I didn't know what that was exactly. And when I was first introduced to the divine feminine at the UU Church, the Unitarian Universalist Church, that I have been a member of now for more than 30 years, and which hosted my original moon circles. I started doing them in the mid 90s. I did them for 27 years. Stopped doing them live in October, I guess, last year, but still do them virtually. But every time I would talk about this exploration that was so new and outside of the box for me, I would be very self-effacing and very, oh, I wouldn't want to say too much. I didn't want people to think I was weird or different. And so I'd roll my eyes and I'd call it the weird stuff. And and one of my favorite stories is there was a point that when I was at and my boys are now, late 30s, 41 turns 41 this month. So when they were little and playing soccer, I was at a potluck, end of season potluck, and I found myself talking about all the stuff that I was doing, studying the divine feminine, studying the early goddess religions. I had discovered astrology, ritual, tarot, all the different ancient symbol systems, and that just so spoke to me. And I found myself at this potluck. I don't know why, I don't know where it came from, but for the first time, talking about all the stuff that I was studying. And I was studying, I was starting a master's program in psychology and feminist psychology and women's spirituality. And I found myself talking about it without apology, just kind of this is what I'm doing. And as usual, I'm watching I don't know, 6 or 7 people, other parents that were talking. And, a third of them, their eyes kind of glazed over and they faded away. Another third, they were like curious, not so sure, but curious, stuck around. And then the other third were like, oh yeah, my sister just gave me a goddess figure or tarot card or. So, and I found myself for the first time not hyperventilating over the ones who disappeared because they thought I was weird. Instead,
Wow.
focusing on the people that I could connect with. And so that, for anybody that's been through that, that transition of getting into what you think, and now I say woo woo very lovingly, but that's woo woo and out there, it's just finding the space within myself, within any of us, where we can hold what we do unapologetically. And just, so my essence, this is who I am. That tree metaphor wasn't for naught. Trees are my go-to place for nurturing, for meditation. And I think of the tree as my business. The name of my business is Spirited Living. And the roots are grounded in the divine feminine, and all the branches are all the different things I do. So that's
Wow.
that's the short version of how all this got started.
Yeah, well, see, as you can hear, anyone that's watching us live or catching the replay, is that there's so much here. We could have these conversations every day for a year, and we would still be just barely touching on this. So, Deb, you are also a mother and a grandmother and a wife and a daughter. How do you manage it all? And how does that fit into part of your why of what you're doing here?
Yeah. Another great question. I'm not surprised, Debbie. Yes, I'm all of those things. Been married to the same guy for 44 years. I say we have I think I put this on my website, a dynamic growth producing marriage. which means that I was talking to a couple yesterday, one of my couples that I coach, and they were like, well, we don't yell at each other. And I said, that's fine, as long as you're dealing with the tough stuff and you're having deep conversations. Not that Peter and I yell at each other all the time, but when we get angry, we raise our voices. We're not the mild-mannered, we're very strong personalities. And then we have two boys married to extraordinary women. I mean, I call them my bonus daughters, not even my daughters-in-law. And I grew up in a house with three brothers. So on my website, I think it once, maybe not the latest iteration, but I talk about the work that I do being gynocentric. But for me, and it's because of the way that I grew up too, family was really first. And I grew up in upstate New York, Corning, New York. My dad had offers. He worked for Corning Glass, to move, to get a big fancy job in New York City, which meant, of course, moving us. And he knew that that would be hard for us, so he never took those job offers. And he did fine in Corning, and that was a wonderful place to grow up. So the integration, and it's literally part of my daily, I call them my daily meds, my daily meditations, that when I have a specific request to my guardian angels to, please continue to send wonderful clients, wonderful opportunities, possibilities, expected and unexpected, that integrate perfectly with the ongoing flow of my life. And I'm keeping that very much in my consciousness so that I can continue to do. I have a sleepover, in New Jersey with my little girls once a week, noon from one day to noon the next. So it's, I'm still working in the between times. And until the end of the summer, I'll have a day with our newest little guy who's almost 6 months. So that's all of it has to fit into that. And as I get closer to age 70, I mean, relationships, family and otherwise, have always been important for me. But certainly the older I get, and my husband, Peter, is, 81 and going strong. My 94-year-old mom is also moving slowly, but all there mentally. So there's just lots of branches of that family tree as well that I'm really committed to.
Wow. So Deb, I dropped the link in the chat in case you do want to drop it over into your people. So we
Oh,
get
great.
so excited here. And I have to tell you, I have to admit that Facebook wasn't playing nice this morning. So the intention was for us to go live in my Empowering You community, and then a different area. And plan 3 is we're live here on my profile, which allows Deb to then share to her people. And so if you don't catch it live, it's no big deal, but just know that we had the intention of this so that you could ask Deb questions and that I would watch for this. But I'm going to hopefully pull enough out of you that most of your questions are answered. And so one of the things that that really comes through is this whole idea of family. And I think that when I hear you speak, I see this vision of this tree is that everyone that you serve, whether it's your personal family or your inner circle or your people that haven't even met you yet, are part of that tree. And I feel like that's why we've connected so well, both inside of the wellness universe, where we are serving an audience that are wellness seekers, but we were also supporting and collaborating with wellness professionals, and that being mind, body, and soul. And over in Joyly, where we are together, we are serving the world because we are here to help ignite joy in each person and help them remember. Now, I would love for you to tell the story about how you came into Joyly and some of the disbeliefs that you had about the power of Joyly, if you would be so kind as to share that with us.
Right. Oh, yeah. Well, and it's funny too. I'm kind of glad that I shared. I don't know if you heard it because you were doing your back end stuff, but my original mission statement, I shared at the very beginning when I was talking about my essence, because it still resonates so strongly with me. And the core of that, and what I identified years and years ago, was that joy was probably my top core value. And that's reflected in my official mission statement, that I came up when I was doing coach training in the mid-90s. But as a kid, I had people tell me that I was hard to be around because I was always so cheerful, which is, which has resulted in me feeling like I had to dampen myself sometimes because, again, that I'm a people pleaser. I'm a positive intelligence PQ coach, and we talk about saboteurs. And my top saboteur, which I knew before I took any of the, did any of the work around, and it took the saboteur assessment, is pleaser. So I don't want to dampen my natural enthusiasm. And yet I found myself doing that. And that's what my initial response was when my dear friend Minx Boren, who's with us at Joyly, she and I have known each other since coaching. We wrote a book together. We went through PQ. We're very dear friends. And she told me about Joyly. I don't remember how she found it. And literally my first response was, oh, really? We're going to jump on the Joy bandwagon with Deepak and Oprah? Come on. And then I let it sit for a couple of weeks, and I didn't click the link she sent, didn't do anything. I think we were actually on vacation over Labor Day or something, or away for a long weekend. And I thought, I guess I should check this out. And I thought, why? And then I did, this deep dive. Why did I respond that way? And it was because of what I just shared, because I felt like it is this, thankfully, it's getting more airplay, if you will. Yes, it's a buzzword in some ways, joy, let's bring joy, but there's such depth and such, we talk about the art and science of joy. There's such depth to what Joyly is doing to spread the gospel. Probably shouldn't say that because it sounds too religious, but to spread the word of how the essence of joy that we all have within us. It's not something that we have to seek, that we, don't search for joy. What is that we say? Don't, we're just saying cultivate.
We're not spreading joy. Joy
Spreading
comes
joy, right.
within us.
Right.
Yes.
So it's been
Right.
the most delightful exploration. And for me, because of my pleaser, because, I don't want people to think I'm too strange. One of the things that I've loved about that deep dive with Joyly is that they and I on my own have found all kinds of really cool studies, the neuroscience behind the importance and the power of cultivating a daily practice around joy, and what we call the chair of joy at Joyly, which is this super simple, so many things, super simple, super powerful way that you can access joy in any moment, and just takes a couple minutes. So for me, it was also, kind of a personal growth moment to examine why I had that response. And I feel like not a counterpoint, but part of joy is, there's so many pieces of it, is self-love, is radical self-care, or what I call sacred self-centeredness. And that's the name of my book, Circle of One, The Art of Becoming a Self-Centered Woman, is being able to, if we live in joy, we are committed also to taking really nurturing, powerful care of ourselves on every level, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And that's what the book's about. The book came out of my master's thesis, which, looked at how we go through transitions and how we use all these ancient symbol systems. But the notion, and what I found years ago, which was really fun, because I teach workshops on, navigating life's big changes, and a big component is through all the overwhelm and the tumult that so many of us are in right now, coming back to your circle of one, to the essence of who you are. And even Stephen Covey, in his 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, like this iconic, famous, business book, the 7th habit is what he calls sharpening the saw, and it surrounds all the other ones. And he says in the book, sharpening the saw means making sure that you keep your self-care sharp. That's the saw, I guess, is your self-care. And he says mentally, physically, emotionally, and he uses the word spiritually in this business book. So I feel like all the joy stuff, all the self-love, the self-care is so intimately and powerfully intertwined. So that was a long answer to your short question, but
And it was so powerful. So I want to summarize that up a little bit, or maybe not summarize it so much as come back to it, is that joy is the fuel for everything else. It is the measurement, but it is also the goal. And that doesn't mean that we have to feel 100% joyful at every moment. There is a phrase that we use inside of Joyly that is living joyly ever after. And we are having panel discussions right now or a deep dive into what does that actually mean? And I don't know if you have your meaning and definition to that clear. Could you share it with us right now? What does living joyly ever after mean to you?
We were joking about that question on one of our Joyly calls yesterday, because one of our other fabulous Joyly ambassadors, global ambassadors, Rachel, she and I met with Cheryl Lynn, who's the amazing goddess in chief at Joyly, to answer that question. And neither one of us could remember what we said to her. So probably should have. I'm sure it must be recorded somewhere.
It's recorded. It's recorded.
So I'm sure it had something to do with a lot of what I've talked about, which is honoring the full range of emotions. Yes, joy is the cornerstone of that and what we need to return to, but it doesn't mean denying or pushing down or repressing the more difficult emotions like anger. Women in particular get, she's a bitch if she's angry. We get labeled all kinds of things, or worry, or any of the things that aren't in this moment of joy. And joy also doesn't have to be this, I'm just all the time. There are just the sweetest, quietest moments. And somebody's probably coined this before, but one time when I was doing a chair of joy, this is going to make me weepy. Unbidden, the memory that came up was what we all felt when my 21-year-old nephew was in hospice and dying, and the whole family came together, and it was excruciatingly painful. But the word that came out, but there was such joy that we could be together, that we could support him, through his final minutes. And the word that came through for me, the phrase was poignant joy, that there are those moments that you can see it, this will affect me for the rest of my life, but that you think, how could you possibly think about joy at a moment like that when you're all in such pain? And we're a very close family. So there are many flavors of joy. And then there are also, and I think that's about living joyfully, is to get that, but there are also so many things that take us away from that, and that's okay too. And to be able to sit with them, to honor them, to honor the anger, the sadness, the grief, whatever those really painful emotions are, because that's what makes us human. And to feel multiple emotions at the same time. I mean, that's what makes us human. I don't know if that's what I said when I talked to Cheryl, but
it's perfect. It's perfect. So the one thing that there's so many ways in which I want to take this direction, and we are running out of time. So I need to have you back because there's so much more that I want to dive into there. You do so many different things in so many different communities, both in-person communities and circle, and church is very important. And I believe there's a choir and there's some other things. And you just actually dropped a little hint that your house or your condo or your apartment is also going to be famous. So can you just share a little bit about how this came about?
Yes. So what you're referring to, Debbie, and I only posted a little bit on Facebook because there was just so much going on. We have a rent stabilized apartment in New York City. And if any of you are familiar with that, I often joke that when I met my husband running 40 something years ago, I walked in here and said, oh my God, I got to marry this guy, because it's 3,000 square feet and it's rent stabilized. And somehow our building is on some location scout list. And, stuff has been done in the lobby. Only Murders in the Building was filmed. There were scenes that took place in our lobby, and our stairs, we're on the first floor. The stairs going up to our apartment are in those lobby things. But we had for 5 days, we had a crew here. 2 days we're getting rid of our stuff in one half of the apartment, bringing theirs in. Filming was Wednesday, and then breaking down their stuff. It was insane, and it was totally disruptive, and it was fascinating, and it was fun. But it was so much more than we expected. So it's supposedly, someone said that they thought it was going to air. It's the original Law and Order. It's going to air on, I think, May 16th or something, Thursday night. So
On Law and
it'll be
Order,
like a couple minutes for a whole week of them being in here. It's apparently, probably won't be more than 5 minutes of random shots.
exactly. But isn't that a metaphor for life?
It's
I
so
want to go
true.
back to this thing of all the work that you've done, and let's call it play, because you have been curious and creating and mastering your doubts and your fears of this thing that like felt like you were weird, and that but you knew that you could serve. And I absolutely love that you serve both in the church and in your own spirituality, and that they are the one thing. I want to have a conversation on that. So many people go, oh, they're two separate things, we can't do that, that doesn't work. And not only have you made it work, you've created an entire business around it, and it weaved it into your inner circle in your real life, because business and life are the same if we're doing it right. So
Call it, and you're right, I call it sacred play. It's really all those branches on my tree, that, on my spirited living tree, on my work tree, my weddings and my coaching and my circles and all that stuff. And then there's the tendrils, my women's chorus has a concert coming up in Alice Tully Hall and Lincoln Center. And yeah, and then I just, after 15 years, we had our last charitable theater group through our Unitarian church. We just had our last show 2 weeks ago. Couldn't mourn that because we jumped into this Law and Order shoot, which was a good distraction from, the letdown that would happen after 15 years of doing such an important thing and raising a lot of money for, great organizations. But yeah, sacred play. Play is the word. You're right.
mm. Well, it has been an honor to have you on, and we have barely touched the surface. So please, anybody that's watching this, comment. Let's make sure that we can convince her to come back and have a deeper
Oh,
conversation.
no convincing.
Maybe we'll do it in a series so we don't have to hop over. But I really wanted people to understand the depth of who you are, and also the depth and the amazing people that we have inside of the Empowering You community. Thank you for being a part of that. The one thing that we didn't even touch on, I don't believe, is that you were also part of International Women's Day, the summit, the panel, the thing that we put together. And I wanted to thank you for that, because it's having people in your community that when you make these decisions based on a new download that you get, and you just say, hey, who wants to do it? Even when life is a little bit chaotic and busy, you know what is a heck yes. You know what is that thing that you're like, I'm going to make time. I don't know what it is. I don't know all the details, but I trust. And I love that my people trust me to lead them and guide them. And then we get to do this play work, this sacred work together, and continue to grow and do this thing. So, Deb, is there any last words of wisdom or something that you love to share with your people each and every time that you are with them?
Well, yeah, I think it's just take exquisite care of yourself, nurture your circle of one, honor what sacred self-centeredness is. And I have to say, you blow me away. I mean, the fact that you jumped in with that International Women's Day Summit and put the whole thing together in like 3 days or something, it was like, oh my God, how does, because you've got grandkids too, and you've got a family that you're committed to, and you're married. I mean, you've got all this stuff, and you're now in the leadership team of Joyly. I mean, yeah, bow down to you. You are amazing.
Thank you. It really does feel like play. And when it starts feeling like work, I know I'm headed in the wrong direction. And it's
Yeah.
time to reset and reevaluate and recalibrate. And I love that I have this entire community to help me do that. So
Yeah.
thanks for joining us today. Thank you, Deb. It's been amazing. I will make sure that I post all of her links and that this will get on YouTube so that you guys can learn more and connect with her, because you can see the depth of the service that she provides. She is an author. She is a speaker. She is somebody that facilitates courses and workshops and programs. And she is somebody that you want in your circle, both if you're needing that or if you are creating content around that. She is somebody that you want to get to know. Thanks a lot, Deb.
Thank you, Debbie.